All right, starting out, I am going to talk about the Tau as a race, and then I'm going to talk about how I feel about them in the setting. So, starting out, the Tau from 40K are segmented into five different caste systems. There is the Earth caste, the Water caste, the Fire caste, the Air caste, and the Ethereals. First, let's start out with the Earthcast. The Earthcast are the shortest of the four, but are the physically strongest. They are the most numerous cast. They make up the majority of the Tau. They are the laborers, they're the workers, the engineers, they're the plumbers, the electricians. Most Tau are these guys. They're the backbone of the Tau Empire. The Earthcast kind of do all the manual labor, inventing, maintaining their awesome mechs. Then we have the Aircast. The Aircast are the physically weakest, but are the tallest cast. They have sleek bodies with hollow bones. They are very thin. They are the pilots. They are the ones flying the ships and the ones, piloting all the cool ships and whatnot. Next up on our list is the Wattlecast. The Wattlecast are the most beautiful of the four Tau species, and are also the most charismatic, the best at social situations. They're very intelligent, they're very charismatic, basically the best at social situations. Their main job is to act as diplomats and to also study and learn alien cultures. Like, for example, they are the ones who typically, would deal with humanity on a diplomatic means. They'll master diplomats, all that kind. They'll master diplomats, and they also, again, study alien races so that way they can then incorporate them into the greater good. Like, when they first met the orcs, they studied them from afar, they learned their language, they gathered up large teeth and guns and tried to and give the orcs the teeth and guns as a gift to try to get the orcs to join the greater good. The orcs thanked them, laughed, and then shot them. After this, the Watercast then put the orcs on the no-fly list when it comes to the greater good. Now, what happens when they can't make peace with an alien race? They send in the Filecast. The Filecast are the Tau race's warrior cast. Kind of like Spartans, but these Spartans have big ass mechs. Yeah, really cool mechs. And on top of that, they're very fast, agile, not particularly strong. One thing to note is that a Filecast Tau would be stronger than the average Hive Scum, but wouldn't be as strong as a healthy human man. Meaning the average Imperial Guardsman is a good bit stronger physically than a Fire Warrior, but not too much. And the strength doesn't matter too much because the Fire Warriors are sent into battle with really advanced armor, with plasma rifles, which is way more advanced than almost anything the Imperium has to offer. The plas guns in the Imperium tend to explode half the time, but the plas guns the Tau use tend to not explode. And also, again, big ass mechs. The Filecast are ruthless, often, obviously, though not the full line defense, obviously that's the Watercast, but the Filecast have their place, and in a game called Warhammer, the Filecast obviously get their time in the spotlight. Now, for a bonus fifth cast are the Ethereals. The Ethereals are essentially the leaders of the Tau race. They're the smallest cast, but each one essentially has an aura that makes the other four casts kind of submit to them and kind of see them as superior. Now, the Ethereal cast we're not entirely sure why they have this field around them and why the other Tau just submit. Essentially, the reason why... Now, the Tau are a very new faction on the block. They're only about 6,000 years old. And so about 6,000 years ago, the Tau were doing normal caveman crap. Banging rocks together, discovering fire, killing each other. But then this random other fifth caste showed up and basically got all the other castes to get along. And since then, Tau have not killed Tau since the Ethereal showed up. And Tau have only been working on this ideology known as the Greater Good. Now, the Greater Good ideology is essentially you need to do the most amount of good for the most amount of people. Especially the Ethereals, because you notice the Ethereals tend to have a better lifestyle than any of the other Tau. Kind of hypocritical, but now the Tau, as I mentioned, do like to have diplomatic means with other races. They are a ask first, shoot later kind of people. Heresy. Now, they do have multiple alien races in their empire, like humans. And the Kroot. Now, the Kroot are the Tau's kind of melee units. The Tau themselves not only suck at melee because they're not that physically strong and they don't really train for it. They suck at melee because of something like they can't, focus their eyes or something like that. I don't know if this is still canon, but they can't, focus their eyes, meaning, swinging a sword or a knife is, not super precise for them. But yet they're able to shoot from far away. I don't think this is canon anymore, but if it is, whatever. Yeah, so they tend to use the Kroot as their melee units, and the Kroot are an interesting race because the Kroot will gain the abilities of anything they eat. They eat an orc, they become a lot stronger. They eat a human, they become a little smarter. The problem is they're supposed to have a balanced diet, and if they were to eat too much of one thing, like if they were to eat too many orcs, they would begin to lose intelligence and only gain muscle mass. I like the Kroot, though, an interesting client race the Tau have. If I remember correctly, the Kroot their entire race is pretty submissive to the Tau. Now, as I mentioned, the Tau are a relatively new block, so they had to meet the old kids on the block and some of the new kids on the block. Their first encounter with humanity were some distant colony worlds that just kind of stopped paying their taxes one day after they joined the Tau. You cannot leave the Imperium. This then meant that the actual Imperium government sent a crusade to go wipe out the Tau. Now, they thought the Tau wouldn't be that advanced. They thought the Tau were barely, able to space travel. So they decided to hit them with something hard to make sure they'd stay down, these primitives. They hit them with Space Marines. The Space Marines dropped down on a Tau planet, and the second they exited their ship, the Space Marine, I imagine, said, "Hey, what's that over there?" Blank, dead. They hit them with railguns, fast-moving mechs, very long-ranged infantry. They kind of went out the gate very OP. And they sent more and more Space Marines after them, and they took over some planets. They lost some planets. The Imperium would lose a lot more, would typically lose a lot of men, Space Marines, and armor fighting the Tau, because the Tau are objectively more advanced. But the Imperium just kept on coming. Now, keep in mind, the Tau probably won't push to their blink. They probably could have sent more in. But I can guarantee you the Imperium this was a single crusade. The Imperium designates crusades every 2 seconds. The Tau Empire is about 100 planets. The Imperium is about 1 million. Now, don't get me wrong, pound for pound, the Tau are probably the strongest faction in the Imperium, except maybe the Necrons, but they still just wouldn't win on the Imperium. The Imperium is much larger. But that doesn't matter, because who do you think is a bigger threat? Some wacky space communists who would occasionally, take one of your planets that you could eventually, take back, or, the Tyranids, or Chaos, or Necrons, or Dark Eldar, or Orcs. Yeah, the Space Commies weren't number one on the radar, but they did still send the Crusade, and the two of them fought for a little bit until some Tyranids showed up, and the two essentially joined forces to eradicate the Tyranids, and then the Crusade was kind of called off, but there still has been some skirmishing between both sides, as the Tau try to gain more worlds, and the Imperium says, no. The Tau also, before meeting the Imperium, actually had a run-in with the Eldar. Now, the Eldar they met were the Dark Eldar. And this was also their first encounter with the Tyranids. They were fighting off the Tyranids, and the Dark Eldar showed up and said, hey, we'll help. And the Tau said, yeah, thanks, man. And the two fought off the Tyranids, and the Dark Eldar was like, hey, can you send us 100 members of every caste? So that way, as a cultural exchange? They said yes, but no ethereals. Now, the next time the Dark Eldar and the Tau were fighting off the Tyranids, they noticed that Dark Eldar were fighting with weird new units that were the twisted, disgusting abominations that they made out of the Tau, which if I talked about it any further, I'd get taken off of YouTube. Just let your imagination go wild what the Dark Eldar would do to these poor Tau. Now, the Tau then attacked the Dark Eldar, and the Dark Eldar left, and then attacked an undefended Tau planet, kidnapped their entire population, and did who knows what with them. Now, some Tau biology real quick. By the way, I'm not going to touch on the first meeting with the Orc, because I kind of already touched on that, but yeah, it didn't go well. Also, before I get into that, the Tau, after this, actually attacked the Craft World, thinking all Eldar were the same, and then the Eldar were like, ew, what the fuck, and then blew up the Tau, and then the two kind of skirmished for a little bit before the Tau then realized, hey, these guys aren't the same, and they apologized and went home. Yeah, so Tau biology. The Tau are blue, obviously. They have suspicious-looking orifices on their heads. That could be fun. And they are typically a little shorter and weaker than humans. But they advance crazy fast, having technology that is quite possibly better than anything the modern Imperium has, with only being about a 6,000-year-old race. Now, the Tau technology certainly doesn't surpass the stuff humanity had in the Dark Age technology, doesn't surpass the Necrons, and doesn't surpass the Eldar, but is better than almost anything the Imperium has today. But one interesting thing about the Tau is they can't really fall to chaos. The Tau have super, super weak souls. What do I mean by this? Imagine a normal human soul is a torch in the dark. Now imagine the soul of a psychic human being that of a bonfire. Now imagine the soul of an Eldar being a koi file. Now imagine the soul of a Tau being a candle. They do have souls, but they're super small, and demons usually can't even see them. And when they do, why would they bother with a handful of Tau when they have so many bigger human souls to consume? Now, there was actually a case where a Tau called Commander Farsight, who did kind of form his own small government that kind of branched off from the Tau, but that's a different video. And Khorne tried to corrupt him because he's the only Tau who uses melee. And Commander Farsight pretty much said, ew, fuck off. And Khorne was like, oh, guess I don't get this guy. Yeah, so Khorne was kind of sad that he didn't get Farsight, and Farsight was like, ew. Now, one thing to note is the Taus deny chaos. The Tau refuse to acknowledge that demons exist and just consider the warp and demons to be a different alien. They also consider the warp to be a different dimension that is material, but also they can't really find anything. They straight up just deny the existence of gods and demons, like, nah, you're just an alien waste like me. One thing to note is the Tau do allow worship of religions in the Empire. Like, there are still humans in the Tau Empire who worship the Emperor, which the Tau think is a little strange, but whatever. Also, during their encounter with humanity, they killed the chapter master of the Ultramarines, and they thought they killed the Emperor. And then when they saw other chapter masters, they were like, what the fuck? I can't wait for them to meet Gilliman and think he's the Emperor. That hasn't happened yet, though. One more thing before we go to the next section. You know that thing, the greater good, the Tau kind of follow, which is, it's not a religion, but it's an ideology. Yeah, it's kind of turned into a religion because of humanity. So because Tau have such weak souls, and they don't believe in gods, obviously the Tau aren't creating gods like humanity does, but the human auxiliaries the Tau have straight up started some of them still worship the Emperor, but some of them started worshiping the greater good as a god. So when the Tau first entered the warp, all of the human crew members died, but the Tau were fine because the demons couldn't even find them because of how weak their souls were. They were guided out of the warp by the greater good. The human auxiliaries in the Tau Empire who believe the greater good not to be an ideology, but a god, manifested a god in the warp, which then saved the Tau. And those Tau then went on to massacre human auxiliaries, but that was a big no-no in the Tau Empire, and they kind of had to keep it a secret. Because although the Tau Empire are not the best guys, they would be a villain in most other factions. They're relatively good in 40k. Now, what is Tau Society like for the average citizen? The average citizen gets an appointment, an allowance, and healthcare, and the bare minimum to exist. If you want more than that, you can work. And 99.9% of Tau tend to work, whatever that be. Also, Tau cannot marry anyone of any other caste. Like, an Elf caste can only marry an Elf caste. A Ethereal can only marry an Ethereal. There is no race mixing. Who does that remind you of? Keeping the races and genetics pure. Who does that remind you of? The Tau aren't good guys. They're just a different flavor of villainy. They're not as upfront about it as anyone else. They have committed a handful of small war crimes, like I mentioned, killing human. One thing to note is that one group of Tau that killed the humans had to keep it a secret, because if the actual Tau found out about it, they would have probably imprisoned them or something. So the Tau aren't cool with that. But the Tau have used chemicals to racially sterilize humans when there were too many humans and they didn't want them bleeding. So the Tau definitely aren't good guys. They're just not horrible. But still, humans underneath the Tau Empire have a much better living than humans in the Imperium. Alright, that part of the video done. Now, how do I feel about the Tau in the setting? How do I feel about the entire setting in its whole? Would they be better without the Tau? Well, first thing first, the Tau don't have faster than light travel. They can't travel through the warp or the webway, so they're kind of confined to a small area. Now, do I like the Tau? Yes, I do like the Tau. I feel like they have a very unique aesthetic to Warhammer, and I do like them. It's also the fact that, objectively speaking, Warhammer does not have the most unique factions. They got dwarves in space, they got elves in space, they got orcs in space. They have chaos, which is unique, but they did just kind of pull straight from fantasy. They have Necrons, which are very unique to Warhammer, but they also pulled from fantasy. And then they have the Tau, which are an original idea, which I like. They have a unique and cool aesthetic. It does very much clash with the kind of gothic punk that Warhammer has all the time, but I like it. They're a futuristic faction, and I think we needed that in Warhammer. Now, do I understand why people hate? Do I understand why people would dislike them? Kind of. So the reason why most people hate them is because they are different. They are clashing with Warhammer. They are very different than everything else. But I like their aesthetic. Like, look at most of Warhammer and then look at the Tau. They don't fit in, but I still like them. I think they do I think now they do kind of fit in. I think it was because they were very unique and very new that people hated them. But I feel like after a while, people have chilled out, and me and many other people have come around to liking the Tau. I love that, although they're not good guys, they're objectively nicer than essentially every other faction. And the Tau will look at humanity and be like, oh my god, what the hell? You guys need to join us, Jesus Christ. They put a lot of resources into capturing the Space Marine, and after capturing this Raven Guard, they started poking around his mind, and that was the first time they saw hive cities and how decrepit humanity really was from the Space Marine's memories. The entire time, though, they were poking around in the Space Marine's mind, the Space Marine kept saying, I am of the Raven Guard, you will not break me. I am of the Raven Guard, you will not break me. And the Tau kept poking around, and eventually they said, he changed his tune to, I am of the Raven Guard, and I will do my duty. And he forced both his hearts in the cardiac arrest, killing all the Tau in his body. The Tau then realized, these Space Marines cannot join the greater good because they are not people, they are weapons for a very bloody time, and they are right. I really don't see a downside in more flavors of this plastic crack we all love. I love the Tau, especially the women. And I just think they're a very unique approach. Now, as I said, although the Tau are not a horrible faction, they're still hyper-controlling, hyper-centralized. They're much more fascist than they are communist, really. And they're not good, but I'd rather live in the Tau than in the Imperium. Now, one bad sign about living in the Tau than in the Imperium, and why I changed my mind, I would still rather live in the Imperium. Only because of this. The way of life a human would have in the Tau Empire versus the Imperium is 10 times better. You don't need to eat corpse starch. You aren't cramped in a hive city. You are living such a better life. But the problem is that there is no Inquisition to keep chaos at bay. I know the Inquisition is horrible. I will do a video on them soon. But the Inquisition and other things keep chaos at bay because humanity is very susceptible to chaos. Because the Tau straight up refuse to acknowledge chaos exists and don't offer any protection for the humans in the Imperium, and because most humans in the Tau Empire have forsaked the God Emperor Mankind and started worshipping the greater good as a religion, this has then led to many humans having to be killed because they were taken over by chaos, and then leading to some Tau resentment against humanity. Now, this has led to the Tau being more bitter against humanity and joining everyone else in terms of the angry set, in terms of the I hate everyone setting. But they still do tolerate humans, and they still do regularly incorporate them into the Empire, alongside Leagues of Votann, obviously the Kroot, and the Despots. Now, if you like a faction that, although isn't perfect, they're still trying to do everything they can, you should probably try the Tau. They are an interesting faction with very interesting characters, especially Commander Farsight. He's a Chad. I especially love the early days when they were interacting with new races and they had no idea what to do. Like that poor Tau who approached the Tyranids just to get killed and eaten immediately. Yeah, that poor guy. The poor Tau who were then sent to the Dark Eldar. I really love this kind of day one of World War I kind of mentality, and then now they're more like a year into World War I. They're going into the galaxy and seeing how horrible it is, and then, becoming a bit more bitter and a little more evil, which I like because they are still good guys, but they're no longer goody two-shoes, if that makes sense. Now, I don't personally play the tabletop, but from what I've heard of the tabletop, they're not the funnest to play against because it's just a firing line, and if you get to them, you kill them instantly, and if they can avoid you, then they can kill you instantly. Now, again, I don't play a tabletop, so I'm not sure, but I just hear that they're not fun to play against. Now, I really like the Tau. I hope you'll check them out, and if you've enjoyed this video, then please leave a like, comment, subscribe, Do everything the Chaos Gods of YouTube love. And I would like to say, see you in the next one, and I hope you enjoyed the video. So long. Hey, sorry, this is post-editing Justin. I was just about to... I already recorded this video, but I was about to edit it, and I just saw that Oithel, about 2 months ago, promised he would get a bunch of 40k creators together to make a long video talking about their favorite characters. This is part of the reason why I started uploading, because it inspired me, but he actually did it. And I just want to say, Oithel, the Remembrancer, everyone involved, Chrono the Harlequin, all 39 creators involved, thank you so much. I haven't watched a video yet. I haven't watched a video yet, but I can't believe you guys actually pulled it off. Thank you all for working together. Please, for the love of God, if for whatever reason you found this video and you haven't found that video, go watch it. It's like 3 hours. I've only watched the first few minutes. See you later.